Burnett began his tenure as Senior Vice President for Finance and Operations last month. Is there a motion to approve the consent report?
So moved.
Moved and second. Is there discussion? Is there discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevailed. Mr. Burnett, congratulations. We look forward to working with you, and we'd also like to extend the board's gratitude to Mr. Volna for his service, though short as it was, as the treasurer. Report of the committees. Report of the Litigation Review Committee, Regent Devine.
Thank you, Chairman. Litigation Review Committee met earlier today. At the meeting, there was a resolution considered and approved that authorized the closing of the meeting to discuss the matters subject to the attorney-client privilege. That's the conclusion of my report. I move for adoption.
I don't believe there's a motion needed. There's no action, just a report.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Report of the Facilities Planning and Operations Committee. Regent McMillan, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The Facilities Planning and Operations Committee did meet today. We have one action item and a couple of discussion items. I'll take the action item first. The committee voted to recommend approval of the Recreation and Wellness Facility siting following review and presentation by the administration of 7 alternative sites that they had studied for relocating the recreation and wellness facilities that are being dislocated by the construction of the new track. Given their analysis, the administration recommended the site that was considered by the full board at the October meeting, and the committee then voted to recommend approval of that to the full board. I bring that before the board now.
You make a motion, Regent McMillan?
Yes, I move.
I'll second it.
Been moved in second. Is there discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion. Regent Hsu.
Could I get a copy of the motion, please? Is there a copy of it?
I do not believe there is a copy. Regent McMillan, would you hand Regent Hsu a copy of the motion?
I have my summary notes from the.
That be okay, Regent Hsu? See the summary notes?
I suppose. Thank you.
While you're doing that, and I know we're in the midst of a motion, but Mr. Burnett came in after we had approved him as treasurer, and Mr. Burnett, welcome to the University of Minnesota and your new position, and congratulations. Nice to have you here. Regent Hsu, are you comfortable with the motion?
I'm not done reading it yet.
Okay.
Isn't it in the document? We could have changed it. That's what we did. It's consistent.
Yeah.
Isn't it in the document?
Mr. Chair,
Regent Hsu.
after reading the summary of the motion, my concern is that I don't want the track to be connected with the bubble, because I think if the bubble gets delayed for whatever reason, the track will be delayed, and if the track is delayed beyond the certain months of the summer when the track surface needs to be applied, then we could lose a year of the track, year of use on the track. So I don't know how to articulate that any differently based on what I'm reading here, because this is simply a review action on the siting of the bubble. However, the docket materials actually have a timeline in there which ties the timeline of the construction of the bubble and the track together.
Regent McMillan, clarification, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Regent Hsu, the committee discussed this at some length today, and while there is a chain reaction style of things that need to happen for all this to come together, the motion or the action taken by the committee today endorses moving forward without tying all those together. We need to move forward with the demolition in order to put anything there, and we are also approving the relocation of the bubble there without conditioning it on anything else happening. So we still have a lawsuit that hopefully when the proponents of that see that we've done everything we can as a university to do the preservation, we can move beyond that, but that would be the one piece of this that could slow things down. But I think the guidance to the administration is very clear that we want to proceed, and that what you're raising is not specifically part of this motion and wasn't what the committee voted on, but that possibility was discussed at length today.
So they're
Regent
not,
Shu.
I'm sorry, Chair Johnson, so that they are not tied together right now, or they are tied together right now?
Regent McMillan?
They are, the administration is doing them in series. So they're going to start with the track. They're going to get rid of the elevators. And then when the elevators are gone, they're going to put a softball field and the bubble there. But if anything, we can't predict the outcome of the litigation. And I think it would be up to the administration to come back to us and say, are we okay to keep going at that point if, there is a slowdown in the demolition? It's our expectation they would. Every member of the committee today supported moving forward on the track, but it wasn't specifically before the committee as a standalone item. Sorry, I'm not trying to be obtuse here.
Well,
Regent Shu.
Chair Johnson, thank you. So Regent McMillan, are you saying that there is time in the future to separate the two if necessary?
Regent McMillan.
Chair Johnson and Regent Shu, if something were to happen that's unanticipated, would stop or slow down construction or demolition of the elevators, I would expect the administration to come back to us and clarify what their next step is.
President Kaler, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Regent McMillan has given clear direction. To be clear, our goal is to have uninterrupted access by our students 12 months a year to a rec sports facility covered in the wintertime by a bubble. Our goal is also to build the track in as expeditiously, whatever word is adverb you want to put there, as we can. We clearly have legal issues, and the future is cloudy. We don't have a perfect prediction of how we will sort out the legal issue and the timing impacts. But what we need from the board today is approval to locate the sports bubble and the softball field at the grain steel elevator site. We need that to move the project forward.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regent Rocha, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I voted against the resolution at committee, and just explaining this is part of the reason why. One is budgetary, the other is space utilization in the short term and potentially longer. The funds that are necessary to make this replacement affects our ability to do other things that I place in higher priority in the immediate term. But along with that is, we would have indoor field sports opportunities, perhaps not at the 100% unfettered level that you would with the bubble, but at least for a short-term transitional period, we would have other facilities that we can use. Secondly, by requiring the bubble to go there, we do create the cloudiness that was just described, whereas we can immediately move to the sports fields that replace the surface sports fields, just not in a covered capacity until we've been able to move through this process. So to that extent, I don't support the resolution.
Further discussion on the motion, further discussion on McMillan motion. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion prevails. Regent McMillan.
The committee also took up two discussion items, two important ones. The University of Minnesota Real Estate group came, and Director Harris presented to us in concert with Director McKenzie and talked about the efforts underway at the East Gateway and the tower side work, and a good reminder for the full committee as to the amount of planning that has gone on as we engage those neighborhoods in that direction. So lots of work there and a very, very nicely coordinated set of presentations from the foundation and from our own real estate group. That's all I have.
Thank you, Regent McMillan, for your fine work. Item number 5, on behalf of the Faculty and Staff Affairs Committee, Regent Simmons, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. With respect to action items, I would refer the board to the revised consent report, and the revision that appears, which is different than the docket that was on the website, is addition of requesting approval of tenure for the new Chancellor of the University of Minnesota, Morse, assuming we approve her appointment. This came through late from the faculty, but in time for us to take action today. So with that, the committee recommends approval of the consent report, which includes the appointment of Dr. Michelle Baer as Chancellor of the University of Minnesota Morris and conferral of tenure for outside hires, including Professor Baer. I move adoption of the consent report.
On the Simmons motion, it's been seconded. Discussion. Discussion on the Simmons motion. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion prevailed. Regent Simmons.
The committee participated in 2 discussion items. The first was a review of Board of Regents policy, reservation, and delegation of authority, specifically the appointment authority section, and the committee will take action on revisions to the policy in February and bring forth a recommendation to this board. The committee also discussed the annual report on compensation and the topic of well-being, a holistic approach to supporting an engaged and productive workforce. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Regent Simmons. On behalf of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee, Regent Cohen, please.
Thank you, Regent Johnson. There was one action item. The Academic and Student Affairs Committee received a consent report that includes program additions, changes, and discontinuations. The committee recommends approval of the consent report. I move adoption of the consent report.
It's been moved and seconded, but moved and seconded. Discussion on the Cohen motion. Discussion on the Cohen motion. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion prevailed. Regent Cohen.
We discussed the system campus highlights from 2016 University Plan Performance and Accountability Report and had a great conversation that included all the system campus chancellors and students from each campus. Vice Provost McMaster then delivered the annual Twin Cities Campus Undergraduate Education Update, and as a follow-up from the board's work session in October, the committee continued the discussion on the predictive value of standardized tests and their role in undergraduate admissions. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Regent Cohen. On behalf of the Finance Committee, Regent Beeson, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The committee voted on 2 action items today. First was a report on the biennial appropriation and performance goals. And the committee voted unanimously to recommend approval of the, not unanimously. Vote was 5-1. 5% of the university's 2017 operation and maintenance appropriation is conditional upon the university meeting at least 3 of the following 5 goals. Number 1, improving graduation rates for students of color system-wide. Number 2, increasing the total number of undergraduate STEM degrees system-wide. Number 3, improving the overall 4-year graduation rate in the undergraduate schools at the university. 4, reallocating $15 million of administrative costs. And finally, increasing licensing disclosures. I'm pleased to report the university successfully achieved all 5 of these performance measures set out by the legislature. Therefore, I move approval of the report and direct the administration to forward it to the state of Minnesota.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. Discussion on the Beeson motion. Discussion. Discussion on the motion. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion prevailed. Regent Beeson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The consent report, the committee voted unanimously to recommend approval of the consent report, which includes the purchase of goods and services over $1 million and off-cycle tuition rates for the summer 2017, fall 2017, and spring 2018. I move adoption of the consent report.
Been moved. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved second. Discussion on the motion. Discussion on the motion. If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevailed. Regent Beeson.
Chair Johnson and colleagues, in addition to the 2 action items, the committee also took up 3 additional discussion items. We reviewed the latest results of the administrative cost definition and benchmarking analysis. We examined the international student tuition rates and had a robust discussion. And third, we discussed the annual financial report, which the board will review tomorrow. We received 4 informational items, including the annual business and community development report. That concludes my report today.
Thank you very much, Regent Beeson. On behalf of the Governance and Policy Committee, Regent Cohen.
There were no action items this month. The committee took up 3 discussion items. We reviewed 2 policies, proposed amendments to Board of Regents policy, board policy development, based on our discussion in October and amendments to Board of Regents policy, reservation and delegation of authority that would integrate our board authority policy. The committee also had a productive conversation focused on orientation of new regents. That ends my report.
Thank you, Regent Cohen. On behalf of the Audit and Compliance Committee, Regent Lucas, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The committee had no action items this month. The discussion items were as follows. We discussed Deloitte's external auditor report and received an update on remediation of intercollegiate athletics audit findings, and that seems to be going really well. Our new Chief Compliance Officer, Boyd Coomer, attended the meeting and gave a brief update on the university's compliance program. We also discussed the current compliance rate and options for achieving full compliance with the state statute regarding procurement from small business. This was a robust discussion and very interesting. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Regent Lucas. On behalf of the Special Selection Committee, Regent Simmons, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The Special Selection Committee met on Wednesday, that is yesterday, to review and recommend university appointments to the Fairview Health Services Board of Directors. At our meeting, President Kaler presented one name for direct appointment to the Fairview Board, one name for nomination to the Fairview Board subject to appointment by the Fairview Board, and two names to serve in the university's ex officio seats on the Fairview Board. The committee discussed the candidates and unanimously recommends approval of the following, and these are in the order of those positions I stated. The appointment of Dr. Levi Downs for a 3-year term, the nomination of Dr. Kenneth Roaring for a 3-year term pending appointment by the Fairview Board, and the ratification of ex officio members Dean and Vice President Brooks Jackson and Dr. Jacob Tolar for 3-year terms. We believe that these candidates bring a strong understanding of the academic medical mission and the range of competencies required to advance the university's mission, promote academic health, and provide accountability to the Board of Regents. I'd like to thank my fellow colleagues, our colleagues who served on this committee, Regents Cohen and McMillan, for their service and for service not only to this board but to the university. And I move adoption of the committee's recommendations.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. Been moved and second. Discussion on the motion. Discussion on the Simmons motion. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevailed. There being no other business to come before us at this time, I would seek a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Been moved and second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevailed. We are adjourned.